What's going on, guys? If you somehow haven't heard, there's a ton of rumors circulating around the Winnipeg Jets trading Patrik Laine. Right, you can see a TSN tweet that says Laine's camp says the trade would be mutually beneficial, which basically means they think it would help Laine and the Winnipeg Jets if they were to trade him. So I feel like there's a very good chance Laine does get traded sometime between now and the start of next season. So I figured why not go into NHL 21 and see what it would cost every single team to trade for him. Obviously, some of these trades will be more realistic than others based on trade values, but the good thing is the trade values are actually pretty since this is the start of the season, so you don't have as many wonky ones that you get later on in franchise. Now, speaking of trade value, before I show you guys all the trades, I want to show you what Laine is worth in game. As you can see, pretty close to the max there. 22-year-old, 87 overall right winger, making a little under $7 million there for one more year. Obviously, Laine is a very, very good goal-scoring winger, especially for his age. 22 years old, second overall pick back in 2016. You can see through his 4 seasons there, basically averages 30 goals a season. Best season was year 2, 70 points, 82 games with 44 goals, which is pretty ridiculous. Every other season, right around 30, if not above 30. So a very good goal scorer. A lot of people think he's going to be kind of like the next Ovechkin. Probably not, as good as Ovechkin. I don't think we'll ever have another Ovechkin, but he's probably the closest thing in that early 20s age group in the NHL. So it makes sense he doesn't have a ton of value. Now, looking at the Anaheim Ducks here, the one thing Winnipeg has stated they want in return for Patrik Laine is a top 4 defenseman and a second-line center. I feel like they said that, though, before they signed Paul Stastny, so I think the top 4 defenseman is now more important, and then the other piece would just be like a top 6 forward, essentially. Also, too, I'm sure they wouldn't mind a good young player. But for every single one of these trades, I try to make sure I get a top 4 defenseman coming back. For Anaheim here, you can see it's Josh Manson, Raquel, a second-round pick, and Comtois, which the Jets do say yes to. I feel like it's not too bad of a return for them. Obviously, most of the time, I'm one of the people that it feels like whoever gets the best player in a trade is winning the trade. So for a lot of these, the team that's getting Laine is winning it, but not too bad of a haul there for the Winnipeg Jets. Next year, 1-for-1 interesting trade. Chychrun for Laine, 1-for-1. I think Chychrun's a very, very good defenseman. So Arizona gets a potential superstar, goal scorer, and then Winnipeg gets a solid defenseman. They probably pair with Morrissey on the top pair. Boston here, Carlo DeBrusk, a first, and Coyle. They actually rejected that. I mean, they get their top 4 guy in Carlo, DeBrusk the top 6, Coyle's a middle 6. You also get a first rounder, and first rounders have a ton of value in this game. So when I could, I tried to not include draft picks, whether it's a first or second, and I tried to basically only include seconds, stay away from first rounders. But for that one, I think I actually just had to retain a bit of salary, which honestly wouldn't even have to happen. I think the Jets have more salary than they really should in game. But like I was saying, the first round picks in this game have so much value. I tried to stay away from first round picks whenever I could. So looking at Buffalo here, I actually was able to make a trade taking off the retained salary on Reinhart with Yogi Harju. Jets said no. Initially, I think I was retaining salary on Reinhart to trade him with Ristolainen, but Yogi Harju actually had more value than Ristolainen, so I think I ended up adding a second-round pick here. Yogi Harju is younger than Ristolainen, plus they get a second. I feel like both those trades are pretty equal, but the Jets ended up going with the more youth there. This one's pretty interesting. Johnny Gaudreau, Laine, 1-for-1. There's also been trade rumors surrounding Johnny Gaudreau, so I thought that might kind of be a cool trade. Obviously, Laine, though, is a lot younger, so also adding Shillington here is a pretty solid young defenseman. You can see 23.79, a medium top 4. So him and Gaudreau going to Winnipeg. I think that's actually not too bad a trade for either team, especially too. Calgary's already got Kachuk, kind of first line left wing. Throw him on the you could throw Laine on the right wing, Monahan in the middle. That's a pretty nasty first line. So after that, I think we're looking at the Carolina Hurricanes. This is another interesting one. I do a 1-for-1. Dougie Hamilton, we all know, very good defenseman. I think a top 10 defenseman in the league. He's got 1 year left though, so he could be going to free agency. This is kind of like a Kawhi trade maybe, where Winnipeg decides to go all in. They risk Hamilton obviously leaving after this year, but they think maybe with him they have a chance at the Cup, so they take that risk. Again, another interesting trade. I tried not to do like the same formula for all of them. I tried some 1-for-1s, some bigger packages, some younger players, some veterans, mix it up. Now with Chicago, I think initially I was actually trying to make a trade happen with Taves, because Taves is from Winnipeg, so I thought that'd be cool for him to go home, but it just wasn't working in terms of salary and trade value, so instead it ended up being a package around Dylan Strome. You can see here I'm actually having to add a pick because Winnipeg's playing pretty hardball there. So Strome, Bodwin, Zadorov, and I think it was a second-round pick for Laine. Honestly, I think I'd definitely rather have Laine than that package, but again, it's based all on the NHL 21 trade value. Colorado here, I think actually not a bad trade for Patrik Laine. Bowen Byram, Eric Johnson, and then Tyson Jost. Jost is like an extra guy for them. Johnson's actually kind of a salary dump. I think he's getting paid too much. But then Byram, of course, is a very good young defenseman, drafted, was it 3rd or 4th overall. McKinnon, Rantanen, Laine, Landeskog, Kadri in your top 6. And then in terms of their defense, it still looks pretty good. Connor Timmins is probably called up to be the 6th guy. I mean, Laine with McKinnon, that could be an absolutely deadly combo. Then you could have whoever on the other wing, and then play Landeskog, with Rantanen and Kadri on the second line to be stacked. So Columbus here, this was kind of a tough one to make a trade happen. I knew I didn't want to include Seth Jones and Zach Werenski or Pierre-Luc Dubois, because I felt like in real life, none of those three guys would get traded. So I tried to be as realistic as possible with these trades. So I ended up doing Domi Karlsson at first and Bemstrom, which they actually said yes to, but just kind of took a while to figure out a package that would work. Again, for that one, I had to include a first rounder, but try to stay away from it when I could. Dallas here, John Klingberg and Faxa. So they're getting a top four defenseman. Obviously, Klingberg is very offensive. I think him with Morrissey could be a really nice pair. Faxa, another kind of middle six center for them. They said no, and I think the second rounder may have pushed it over the top. Maybe not. Oh yeah, it does push it over the top. Okay, so that's an interesting one too. Klingberg's not the oldest, but I think he's like late 20s. Faxa, a second. I don't know. The Jets fans, that would be one I'd be curious if he'd be willing to do that or not. I think you definitely have to say like how basically much you believe in Klingberg. Some years he's awesome, other years not so much. This Detroit trade here, as a Detroit fan, I would honestly love to do this. Some people probably wouldn't, but I feel like the people who wouldn't put way too much stock into potential. So it's Zadina and Cholowski for Laine. The thing is, we're hoping Zadina turns out to be as good as Laine. Probably not. Like I said, Laine's put up 30 goals every year. He's only 2 years older than Zadina. Basically, you're just getting a better player, slightly more along in their development. You are losing Cholowski, which hurts, but obviously you have to give up something to bridge the gap between Zadina and Laine. So as a Detroit fan, I would definitely do that trade. Edmonton here, Nuge, Bouchard, and a first-round pick. So I lose Nuge, but you get a great goal scorer. I think I ended up looking at it like Edmonton's defenseman. Obviously, Bouchard wasn't an NHLer for them anyway, so defense is fine. And then you play, like, you could have the best, honestly, first line in the league with, say, Draisaitl, McDavid, Laine as your first line, or you could split them up. But either way, it gives them a ton of options. I was going to say, too, with the Detroit trade, I think they definitely are a team that has a ton of cap space to sign Laine, as that is one thing. He's got 1 year left, and I think he's definitely going to want a pay raise. Florida here, Keith Yandel definitely gives them a solid top four defenseman. Dennis Sanko is a very good prospect over in the KHL right now. Borgstrom's not bad, second round pick. I was surprised they were saying no to that. I thought that was a pretty good haul. Maybe it's because of Yandel's age. I'm not really sure. Again, I think Dennis Sanko's a pretty good prospect. They get Borgstrom on top of that and 2 seconds here for this trade to go through. So Florida has to give up a ton. Dennis Sanko's honestly like probably a low-end Laine, honestly. He hasn't come to the NHL yet, so again, it might be premature to say that, but I thought that was a pretty good haul. Turcotte, Burnfoot in 2 seconds there. Winnipeg says no. Turcotte was the 5th overall pick, I believe, a couple years ago, so very good, prospect coming back. I figured with Byfield, maybe they're willing to do that to get a goal scorer. Burnfoot, solid young defenseman, a couple second rounders there. Anderson Dolan actually ended up adding as well, and I think the Jets said yes to that. I think, Anderson Dolan does have more value than a second round pick, so that one makes sense to me. After that, looking at the Minnesota Wild here, so Dumba and Boldy, like that's a pretty good combo there. You get your top 4 guy in Dumba, right-handed, so you pair well with Morrissey, who's a lefty. Boldy was like, I'm trying to remember, 11th overall back in 2019, so a very good prospect, looked pretty good in college. I'm surprised, honestly, Winnipeg says no, especially because they both had pretty good value. So I ended up adding a first-round pick here, the Pittsburgh first-round pick. Minnesota had way too much value. I knew for sure Minnesota would not be trading Kaprizov, but Dumba, Boldy in the first, I think that's probably the worst trade so far for a team trying to get Laine. That's a lot to give up, but that's basically all my options there. Montreal now, Deneau, Romanov, and Duran. I'm sure Montreal fans don't want to give up Romanov, but if you're getting Patrik Laine back, I think you could, make a case it's worth it. Jonathan Duran really isn't living up to his contract, to be honest. He could turn it around, but like he's running out of time. And then Deneau, if they think they're not going to re-sign him, you also add the second-round pick there. I really don't think that's too bad a trade for Montreal, getting Patrik Laine. After that, you have Nashville. So the big part of this trade, of course, was Fabro. Sorry. Then after that, I think all I actually had to do was add like a second-round pick. Fabro does have a ton of value, being a solid young defenseman. Maybe too much value. I think he was really good in college. I'm not sure how much he's proved so far in the NHL to basically, it's basically a 1-for-1 him for Laine. You compare that to, say, Chychrun or Dougie Hamilton. Those other 1-for-1s were much better. New Jersey here, sort of similar, I think, to the Zadina trade with Detroit. They're trading Holtz, who could turn out to be as good as Laine, but obviously nothing's guaranteed. I think that would be like his ceiling would be a Laine player. So Holtz here with Ryan Murray. I thought actually might get it done, which for New Jersey is essentially Holtz in the 5th. All they had to give up for Murray. They say no, though, so made it Severson. A bit more value than Murray. Winnipeg still said no, so definitely playing hardball here. I think I added 1 second-round pick, which did get the trade done. After that, the New York Islanders try to make a trade here. So Noah Dobson, of course, be the top 4 defenseman. He's young. Brock Nelson be their second-line center. When possible, obviously, I try to stay with the things that it's according to like the insiders Winnipeg's asking for. So Dobson, Nelson, they said no to, but looked like it was pretty close. I think all we actually had to add here was a second round pick. It's pretty crazy. Like the second round pick there, that'd be like a low end first in NHL 20. I'm somebody, originally I thought the picks having more value would be good, but I think they have a bit too much value. I'd like to see them maybe at like 3/4, even 2/3 of the current value they have. So the Rangers trade here, I was thinking about doing something with Matthew Robertson, Condre Miller, trying to get a young defenseman in there, but it wasn't really working. I felt like they didn't really have the defensive depth to trade an NHL guy, so I decided to do something similar to the Zena trade, the Holtz trade, and that was trade Kaapo Kakko, another Finnish winger drafted second overall, but his rookie season was nowhere near as good as Patrik Laine. So I think Kakko in 2/3. I don't really know many Rangers fans that would say no to that, but who knows? Maybe they'd surprise me. Actually, the Ottawa Senators here, so clearly won't trade their first because that could turn out to be, ratty power. Who knows in 2021? But Logan Brown, Brandstrom, they traded Stone for, so you kind of have to look at it that way. But even though Brandstrom is a good young defenseman, Patrik Laine is a very good player. You add Logan Brown, who's pretty solid but not insane, a second-round pick. I think, both teams are probably okay with this trade, which kind of tells you it's pretty fair when both ones are like, I guess I'll do it, but neither side really feels like they won. Philadelphia is actually a team that's had a lot of, speculation. They're the ones that are going to make the trade. Winnipeg, they're in the East. They have a bit of cap space. They're active. I've heard Farabee's name out there to get Laine. I've heard Nolan Patrick, as he's actually from the Winnipeg area, not really, working out in Philly. He's got injury prone and stuff, so maybe Winnipeg takes a chance on him. Ghost makes sense. They want a top 4 defenseman. He had a bad season. Phillies wanted to move on from him, so try to base it on the rumors. Farabee, Patrick, Ghost, 2 seconds. Winnipeg says yes. That's probably the most likely trade of all the trades we've done so far, so let me hear what you guys think about that Philly trade. Looking at Pittsburgh next, I think John Marino was the kind of core piece of this trade. Solid young top 4 defenseman. Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, even Letang. I knew I would not be touching. I added Zucker there as well, so they get a top 6 winger. I feel like that was pretty close, but I'm pretty sure we had to add either a prospect or a pick. Obviously, making 31 trades, it's tough to remember every single one. 2022 first there, so that could be Shane Wright, could be Matthew Savoy, but I mean, Pittsburgh, I think, still going to be contending at that point. I feel like Crosby and Malkin, they got at least a few more years left in them. San Jose Sharks here, this was an interesting trade. So Brent Burns, they get a top 4 defenseman, but like with his age, with his salary cap, it's almost a cap dump. And then they also get Ryan Merkley, who's a really good young defenseman, but again, he's kind of making up for Winnipeg taking on that big salary of Brent Burns, as well as, getting a nice piece. Second round pick there, Weisblatt, who I think they just picked first round, 31st overall this year, gets them Patrik Laine. So that was definitely like an interesting one. I'm not really sure, honestly, which side I think won. So St. Louis here, this one's kind of cool too. I know there's a lot of Tarasenko trade rumors a couple of years ago. Honestly, Tarasenko is kind of similar to Laine. He's put up like 30 goals 5 years in a row. Basically trade him and Kostin to get a younger version of Tarasenko, a bit cheaper, until of course Laine needs his new contract. So I feel like that's not too bad of a trade for St. Louis. If they actually did that trade, probably could have had enough money to sign Pietrangelo. This Tampa Bay one's also pretty interesting. I've heard they're trying to trade Johnson to clear cap space, to get Sergachev signed, to get Cirelli signed. But teams want Johnson at 50% and they want a pick to take him at 50%. So here they get rid of Johnson, but they add Sergachev. Sergachev, of course, the big piece for Laine, and then maybe they think Sergachev's worth more than Laine, but because Winnipeg's also taking Johnson, it's kind of a fair deal for Tampa. I think for Winnipeg, they get a top 6 forward in Johnson. They get Sergachev. Not a bad trade for them either. Toronto here, Nylander and Dermott. I feel like, Laine is better than Nylander. Toronto fans can argue that if you want to. So Dermott, I tried to close the gap with. I felt like it was really close. Out of the third there, it still got rejected. I felt like you had the second, it should go through. And I mean, Dermott, with all the defensemen they signed, they should honestly still be fine on the back end. Then you get a guy like Laine, a goal scorer. You have him on one line, Matthews on another. You still have Tavares, you still have Marner. Pretty insane, honestly, I think, for that top 6. So then after that, of course, moving on to the Vancouver Canucks. This was kind of tough trade to make, just due to salary cap. You can see I didn't include Sutter there just for the cap. Then I was trying to add a goalie because I'm basically trying to get pieces. But Colson was actually the big piece of this one. Russian winger over in the cage. Cheryl Ulavy as well. Good young defenseman going over. But because they're all entry-level deals, I had to get some cap going back to Winnipeg. They still said no to that as well. So I actually had to add a second-round pick there with DiPietro, who was like a solid young goalie prospect. But finally, Winnipeg does accept. So a couple more trades looking at here. Vegas. Couldn't really get a defenseman to work with Vegas. Pietrangelo and Theodore had too much value. Everyone else didn't seem to have enough. So Cody Glass, Max Pacioretty. Pacioretty's a bit overpaid, but he's still a top 6 winger. He can replace Laine. Cody Glass, of course, is a great prospect for Winnipeg to pick up with Pacioretty, but playing hardball there, you can see they still said no. So I think I just throw on the Vegas second rounder there, which wasn't too crazy of value, and Winnipeg does say yes. That one, again, I don't think, too far off, like in terms of the value on each side. And then finally here you have the Washington Capitals. So Orlov is the top 4 defenseman they're getting. Veranda is the top 6 forward. Obviously, Washington loses some defensive depth here, but I mean, you have Ovi on one line, and you have like the second coming of Ovi on the other. It would be pretty ridiculous, I think, to have like say Ovi Backstrom line 1, because that's have Laine line 2. Then you probably have Oshie and Tom Wilson as the other 2 wingers in that top 6. Absolutely ridiculous. Had to add a first and Sprong there, but I think Washington, to have 2 of the best goal scorers in the game, would definitely do that trade. So that's it, guys, for all the teams making a trade for Laine. Let me know what you thought about your team's trade. Would you do it? Would you not? In the comment section below. Also, guys, if you did enjoy this one, leave that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.